Guys, my special guest, you've seen him here before, is Scott Ritter. He's former U.S. Marine Corps. Let's go ahead and bring him in. He was also a weapons inspector. I'm sure Scott has a lot to say. What's going on, Scott?
Just living the dream or living the nightmare. What a world we live in. I mean, that old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. We have been cursed doubly, triply, quadruply. The world is going to hell in a handbasket, and we're along for the ride.
That's right, we are. Oh my gosh. So first things first. There's so much to discuss, but something was announced earlier today that I do want to show you. Let's go ahead and bring this up here. It's here. So I don't know if you saw this. But this is the other day, but we'll get to the announcement today. Exclusive: U.S. moving fighter jets to the Middle East as Israel-Iran war rages. So that was announced on the 17th. And then this is Donald Trump also around that time saying we are beyond a ceasefire. I want you to hear what he said here.
He said I was going back home to make a ceasefire. Not a ceasefire. We're long beyond ceasefire. And I said, why do you say that? Why would you say ceasefire? It's a bad term to use, because a ceasefire means like everything's going swimmingly, we'll take a little time off. It's not. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
Mr. President.
So I thought it was a very badly worded statement by him, and obviously I let him know that. He said I was...
Okay. That's the statement there from Donald Trump, where he said that they were going full speed ahead. They didn't want him to have a nuclear weapon. But then today it was announced President Trump will allow 2 weeks for diplomacy before deciding on a U.S. strike against Iran, the White House said. Now, that's interesting. That was announced today because according to this, they already started moving fighter jets to the Middle East. So I want to get your perspective on this. What do you think is happening here? Does Donald Trump want troops to go fight against Iran, or is this some type of tactic that he's using? What do you think is happening?
Well, first, I have a question for you, because maybe I've missed something. But Sabrina, has Congress declared war against Iran? Did I miss something here? Are we at war with Iran?
Nope.
Has the president addressed the American people saying that, he has no choice but to go to war? Because the words he used, first of all, if we're not at war with Iran, why does he keep saying we when he speaks about this? We don't want this. We want that. We're far beyond that. Because the implication is we're at war with Iran. And the answer is we are at war with Iran. We are complicit with the Israelis. The Israelis carried out a Pearl Harbor type surprise attack against Iran in total violation of international law. We are talking about a classic war of aggression. And the United States was complicit. We committed an act of perfidy. Now, perfidy is a cute little word. I have to give a hats off to Garland Nixon, who introduced it to my modern day lexicon. I mean, I was aware of it in the past, but Garland brought it back up. But we're the ones, we, America, because I can say we, I'm American, you're American. The president's supposed to work for us. America told the Iranians that we were interested in a negotiated, settlement regarding Iran's nuclear program. And we had engaged in direct dialogue or indirect dialogue, depending on the, how you want to play semantics here, with the Iranians. And we were scheduled to have the 6th round of negotiations with the Iranians this past Sunday. Ali Shamkhani, who is one of the lead Iranian nuclear negotiators, 2 days before the Israeli Pearl Harbor attack on Iran that killed him, by the way, they deliberately targeted this man. Get what I'm saying? They killed the lead negotiator. Said, we're ready to sign a treaty with the United States. Did you hear what I said? We're ready to sign a treaty with the United States that says Iran can't have a nuclear weapon and won't have a nuclear weapon. Isn't that what the president wanted? We're ready to cap the enrichment of Iranian uranium to 3.75%. It takes 90% to make a nuclear weapon. 3.75%, cap it. We're ready to allow U.S. inspectors to join the IAEA, so the United States has a higher degree of confidence in the verification. They were ready to do a whole bunch of things, basically everything possible to prove that they weren't pursuing a nuclear weapon. And they were told that this negotiation was taking place on Sunday. President Trump said so. The Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu, said, we're going to wait until after Sunday to make a decision. We're going to give these negotiations a chance. And then they launched a Pearl Harbor attack. The president says, I was fully aware of the plans. I knew everything. That's perfidy. And perfidy isn't just a clever little word that Garland Nixon gave me. It's a crime. It's a war crime. It's against international law. We are a war criminal state that is at war with Iran as we speak. That's what the president's words tell me. Yes, moving aircraft here and there and everywhere is, first of all, it happens all the time. I don't know how many aircraft they're talking about moving. We already have considerable amount of air assets in the region. Understand that we've been bombing the hell out of Syria nonstop for several years. We fly combat air patrols over Iraq. We maintain. What's curious is that the main airfield for the U.S. Air Force in the Middle East, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, is empty right now. All those planes have left because they're worried about the Iranians blowing the hell out of it. I think they went to Saudi Arabia, which begs the question, what's Saudi Arabia's role in all this? So there's just so much hidden into the president's statement. It's very disturbing, the language that he's using. And it just shows that the United States can't be trusted. I mean, right now the president is allegedly sending Steve Witkoff to go talk to Arakchi, the foreign minister of Iran, about negotiation. But why would the Iranians ever negotiate with the United States after this Pearl Harbor event? Why would they ever do that? And it's also, I just want to point out, when the president said, a ceasefire implies things are going swimmingly, they're not. I think what the president's saying is Israel's getting the snot kicked out of it right now and needs the United States to step in.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it was reported today that Iran bombed a hospital in Israel, and a number of outlets, what they're not mentioning is that there was a military base like right next to that hospital. I'm against still bombing hospitals. However, what they are omitting, and a lot of them did not report on this, is that on Monday, Israel bombed a hospital in Iran. See, they always leave, key pieces out. And now we're starting to see, I saw pictures of Tel Aviv that I thought I would never see, images that I thought I would never see, that kind of resembled what we see in Gaza, but obviously not to the full extent of that. And I honestly think, and you tell me what you think about this, I honestly think like Israel is somewhat afraid.
They're scared to death. That's why they shut the borders. Right now, Israel has closed its borders. Nobody's allowed to leave Israel. Why? Because if they open the borders, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Israelis would flee. Israel's becoming a place where you can't live. It's uninhabitable. The ability to sustain viable life is rapidly being squeezed out of Israel as the Iranians target power plants. If they hit the Ashdod power generation facility, Tel Aviv goes dark. They blew up refineries. There's going to be, a shortage of fuel. The economy's non-functioning. And let's talk about this hospital that was hit. First of all, the hospital wasn't hit. The building next to the hospital was hit, which happens to be a command and control center for Israeli intelligence. Now ask yourself, why did the Israelis put a command and control center for intelligence next to a hospital? I mean, aren't these the same Israelis that blew up every frickin' hospital in Gaza under the pretext that Hamas had a command and control center under? You remember that, Al Shifra? Command and control wasn't there, didn't exist, but
they're using the people as human shields.
Yeah. So, and now I have to listen to an Israeli minister say, bombing a hospital is a war crime. Well, no kidding, pal. The hypocrisy of the Israelis right now. The Iranians carried out a precision strike against a military intelligence headquarters. And let me make this clear too. The hospital loses all protection. Read the damn international humanitarian law. The hospital loses all protection the moment it allows itself to become a cover for military action. It's no longer a protected site. Unlike the hospitals in Gaza, which weren't covers for military action, where the Israelis, gosh, what did they do? Snipers shot surgeons while they were doing surgery. Assassination teams came into the operating ready rooms and assassinated patients after surgery was done on them. That's what the Israelis do with hospitals. All the Iranians did is blow up an intelligence command post, which means there was no hospital next to it, because you can't have a hospital next to it. Or else, if the Israelis are claiming that, then they are guilty of a violation of international humanitarian law, because they're using a hospital as a shield for military activity. So let's be quite clear here. Iran did not attack a hospital. Iran attacked an Israeli intelligence command post. The Israelis put that next to a hospital, which means there is no hospital there under international humanitarian law. So let's be very clear what's going on here. But the media is not going to spin it properly, because the media, his job is to make Israel look as good as possible. But you can't make Israel look good right now. That's the problem. There's no front right now where Israel's looking good. Israel's getting beat, blown up. I mean, this is embarrassing for Israel, and it's only going to get worse. The Iranians have been planning this campaign for a long time. They didn't want this war. They weren't ready for this war in terms of the immediacy. It was a surprise attack that gave them a bloody nose and a black eye, and they're missing a tooth. I mean, the Israelis hit them hard. There's no doubt about that. But the Iranians have gotten up, dusted themselves off, and now they're implementing a campaign. And this is what should scare all the little pro-Israeli people out there. This is a campaign that seeks to strategically defeat Israel, and they're achieving their objectives. And this is why Trump is in absolute panic state. Seymour Hersh claims that they're going to attack this weekend. The Donald Trump's 2-week thing. Why would anybody believe Trump? I mean, he said he wanted negotiations on Sunday, and then he greenlit an Israeli surprise attack on Friday. So I don't think the Iranians are buying into any of this. They anticipate America to do the worst, but the Iranians are engaged in a campaign that if it goes on for another 2 weeks, Sabby, we're only 1 week into this war, and Israel's already losing. 2 weeks from now, Israel will have lost.
Colonel Douglas McGregor was on Judge Napolitano's show earlier, and he said that 1/3 of Israel has been bombed. I think people need to remember, Israel isn't huge. Iran is huge. It's a huge, massive, country. And I think I want to make the connection to Iraq, right? The war in Iraq, because this rhetoric, which I've heard since the 90s, since I was younger, that Iran was building a nuclear weapon, right? So they're coming back with this rhetoric again. Benjamin Netanyahu is on live television on Fox News telling people that Iran tried to assassinate Donald Trump. Interesting, you would mention it now and not after it happened, right? Just these types of things, just making up all kind of stuff. He said that America first is America dead. He said that Iran would attack New York City. And here's my thing. I feel like we're back right before the Iraq war all over again, where we were told, which you're very familiar with, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And it's just like, I remember back then asking myself after September 11, well, if this is about September 11, why are we trying to go to war with Iraq when the people flying the planes were from Saudi Arabia? Didn't make sense to me. And yet Saudi is still an ally. So then the response is Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. It was all over the place. But that's what they used to sell this war to the American people. I feel like Benjamin Netanyahu and the nerve of him to use American television to sell this war to the American people by making up these claims of Iran tried to assassinate Donald Trump and telling people that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, when Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that they were not building a nuclear weapon. Do they think that we're stupid?
Yes, they do. And we are. I mean, you're not. I could be. I mean, people have accused me of being this stupid and worse, but you're definitely not stupid. And I would imagine the majority of your audience isn't stupid. They tune in to listen to you, so that implies a modicum of brain activity. But the rest of America, dumber than dirt. I got in a little kerfuffle on let's see, Tuesday night. My good friend Gerald Salante, who I love to death, hosted a roundtable with Garland Nixon, Joe Loria, Dennis Kucinich, and myself. And we were talking about the American people and such. And I'm not cutting the American people any slack. Both Dennis Kucinich and Gerald Salante were trying to say, don't blame the American people. They're hardworking people and they just don't have time. I said, bull. They got all the time in the world. They play fantasy football. They, that requires a lot of statistics. They do a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it takes time to do fantasy football right. It takes time to do any fantasy sport. They follow Taylor Swift. I mean, everybody has their life. Americans work hard. I get it. They do. I know. Trust me. I'm putting in 12-hour days. But we also live our life, which means we make priorities. And all I'm saying is that the American people have not prioritized the lives of American service members or human beings around the world, that we will put fantasy football ahead of the life of a Marine. We will put fantasy football ahead of the lives of innocent Gazan children. We have. The American people, and I put a lot of responsibility on us because we claim to be a constitutional republic with a certain democratic element to it, meaning that we go to the polls and we vote people in to represent us. We're responsible for the composition of our Congress. We're responsible for the occupancy of the White House. We're responsible for a whole bunch of stuff through the power of the vote. And we have voted in elements that are taking us down the path to war, and we seem to be sleepwalking about it. I mean, my God, you just had the president say straight up that we're at war with Iran. You heard what he said. We. Why aren't the American people going, whoa, time out? The Constitution. You remember that document. It gets a little inconvenient at times because, gosh, it actually matters. The Constitution says that Congress, only Congress, can take us to war. They haven't done that. There's some peripheral movement by Massey and I think McGovern too in Congress to try and do a authorization of use of military force to prohibit the president from going to war against Iran without the consent of Congress. But there's not going to be any support for that because this is Israel, and we do anything for Israel, including break our own laws, turn our blind eye to their spying and their other nefarious activities. But the American people have failed, and they're dumb. So that's what I mean when you said, do they think we're stupid? Yeah, because we are stupid. Stupid is as stupid does, baby. And right where we're not doing anything about the most consequential thing. Do you understand, the American people? I'm talking to you right now, not you, Sabby. I'm talking through you. That if we attack Iran in the name of Israel, because this is about Israel, this isn't about America. Iran doesn't pose a threat to America at all. At all. Iran is bending over backwards to work with America, to be friends with America. They have a president who wants good relations with America. He has told the IRGC several times not that he's opposed them in the highest councils of Iran, saying, no, I won't support this because that would put us at odds with America, the potential of conflict with America. Turns out the IRGC was right, that America can't be trusted, but they have a president who wants good relations. If we attack Iran, they will, kill a lot of Americans. You ready for that, America? You ready for your sons and daughters to come home in body bags? Because I know it looks cool on movies. You get to watch, Kevin Bacon go and escort a body home and cry when he falls in love with the wife of the fallen soldier. And, oh, it's so romantic and wonderful. And it was a good movie. I loved it. But my point is, that's Hollywood. You ready for the reality of it? Because the reality is they're going to come home in body bags if we can recover their bodies. That's a big if. Are you ready for that? Because you're going to come home in big numbers. Are you ready for the headlines that say America got its ass kicked? because we're going to get our ass kicked. We can't defend our bases from Iranian missiles. Look at Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is defended by the most densely packed in anti-ballistic missile shield the world has ever seen. And it's getting beat on a daily basis by the Iranians. We got nothing at our bases. They will flatten them. But then they will flatten the energy production capacity of the Middle East. Gone. And here's the thing. It's not just that you're going to be spending $25, $30 for a gallon of gas. It's you're going to starve to death. You know what happens when we don't have diesel in this country? And we won't have diesel in this country. The trucks don't drive. You know that grocery store you like to go to, get all that funny food that we eat? You know, where do you think the food comes from? It ain't local. It comes from California, it comes from Florida, it comes from other places. And it's brought here by trucks, driven by truckers who have to put diesel in the tanks of the trucks. And when you don't have diesel, the trucks don't drive and nothing moves and your shelves are empty. That's what's going to happen, America. Total paralysis of this country. Now ask yourself what happens when you're hungry, when you got no gas, you can't drive your car, you're at home, power going out, can't pay bills. Do you think Americans are going to sit around and go, ah, shucks? Or do you think they might actually rise up and do something about it? This country is fundamentally divided right now. I mean, I'm not promoting this. I love my country and I want my country to remain intact. But my God, if you don't understand the trajectory on, we have a man in the White House who is literally insane. He's a narcissistic madman who's insane, has lost it. And he's going to take us to a war with a country that has a plan to beat us. And they're going to execute that plan. And we will fall apart from within. All of our strategies, the CIA strategies of regime change, all require us to sanction, isolate, and then work our nefarious ways inside to cause societies to collapse from within. Our society's collapsing from within. I mean, we are literally just one major federal crisis away from states starting to talk about secession. And then we have civil war, and then we don't have the United States of America anymore. That's the direction we're heading, ladies and gentlemen, because we have an orange-faced fat fool sitting in the White House who has lied to us and is lying to us now, and Congress doesn't have the courage because we've sold out to Israel. We've literally sold out. This country is controlled by here. Now, the good news is if we don't do anything, Israel's going to lose this war. They're going to lose. They're losing. They can't win this war. Have you seen Lord of the Rings? One of my favorite.
I've watched it over and over and over again.
Yeah. So you know the second movie, the King of the Rohan, and he's been taken over. There's an evil spirit inside him, and he's weak, and there's somebody whispering in his ear. Let's call the King of Rohan America. And let's call the person whispering in his ear AIPAC. And let's call the evil force behind there Israel. And they own him, and he can't see it. Whisper, oh, yes, but we must do this. But in the moment Gandalf comes and drives out the demon, clear eyes and all that. As soon as we can free ourselves from Israel, we are going to be clear-eyed and this country will cure itself. But Israel has infected this country. It's a parasite that's taking control of us. And we have a chance right now to see Israel lose. And if Israel loses this war with Iran, as it will, Israel will cease to exist. Not because Iran's going to drive them into the sea and murder them, because Israel's going to fail as a state. Millions of Israelis will flee. If they open the borders right now, Israel's going to empty out.
Yeah.
Millions will flee. And then you have a demographic problem. How do you continue to justify the continuation of an exclusive Jewish state when, let's say, there's only 3 million of them left and there's 12 million non-Jews? Suddenly you're looking at a two-state solution, a one-state solution.
Uh-oh. I think Scott froze there for a second.
I think the FBI just took care of us. I have to stop talking about the demise of Israel. They're going to bump you. But look, I'm just saying that Israel's the problem here. And America's on a highway to hell because of Israel. And the American people are stupid because they're letting it happen.
I will say one thing that gave me hope is that recent poll that said that 60% of Americans don't want America to go to war with Iran. I wish that number was higher, but the fact that this just began and it's already 60% say no, I see that more as, a positive thing. I think that's why Benjamin Netanyahu is posting these ads on YouTube in English to try to convince Americans that we need to go to war with Iran, because they realize they're just losing the fight there. I have a question for you here about Tulsi Gabbard. Ray McGovern has an interesting point here. He said, memo to Tulsi Gabbard, resign. Trump has trashed the last vestige of independent intel analysis. Don't lie. You are not on the same page. Leave lying to Trump. He knows Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. Go public. Americans have the right to know this. Tulsi Gabbard has been very quiet, Scott, since she made that video warning about nuclear war. But she did give that, she was at that hearing and she did say that Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. What do you think is happening there? You think there's a chance that Tulsi could come forward and just let people know, listen, this isn't right? Well, why is she so quiet?
Well, first of all, she's the director of national intelligence. She's not a political figure. Her job is to advise the president of the United States, not to come screaming and reporting to the American people. Look, I like Ray, felt that if Tulsi being shamed by the president the way he did on TV, remember when they said, Mr. President, Tulsi Gabbard briefed Congress that there was no, and he says, I don't care what she says, which implies that he's not getting his intelligence from the United States, he's getting it from Israel. And at that point in time, I said Tulsi should probably resign. But then you hear stories about cabinet meetings where she's there and the pushback in the cabinet meetings. You also hear that Tulsi Gabbard made that video about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's a reason why she made that video. She's not stupid. She's a very smart person. And she made that video because she knows that the president is planning to drop a nuclear bomb on Fordo right now. And she made that video to say, no, nuclear weapons cannot be used. That was an indirect attack. The president is reportedly furious at Tulsi for making that video. She didn't mention him. She didn't mention policy. She just said, I came back from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and we can never use nuclear weapons again. Amazing statement. So she hasn't remained silent. She's spoken out on the critical issue of the day in a very dramatic fashion. But if she resigns, and this is what I would ask Ray, who's going to stop the president? Right now, Tulsi's in the meetings and she's constantly reminding the president and around everybody, she goes, they don't have a nuclear weapon. They're not pursuing a nuclear weapon. This isn't like George Tenet with George W. Bush going, it's a slam dunk, Mr. President, slam dunk, WMD, let's go to war. This is Tulsi in front of the cabinet where the president's trying to make a case for war based upon Iran pursuing a nuclear weapon. The director of national intelligence saying, no, they don't have it. And that prompts other people to speak up and say, then why are we talking about going to war, Mr. President? I mean, and the president has to pull back and say we have to consult and all this kind of stuff. So I like Tulsi where she is right now, because she is, I think, the break, and she's also the moral conscience that needs to be in place to stop this madman from, committing horrific acts in our name. And the other thing with Tulsi speaking up like that, it allows the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to question the legality of action, because the chairman, while you have to obey a legitimate order, if you're going to go to war, I mean, the chairman might say, what is our authority for the use of military force, Mr. President? Has Iran attacked us? No. Why are we attacking Iran, Mr. President? Is there an imminent danger? Yes, nuclear weapons. Well, Mr. President, the director of national intelligence says there is no nuclear weapons program. And if you're going to contradict her, what's your intelligence? Does the president want to commit to the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff that he's acting on Israeli intelligence that hasn't been vetted by the American intelligence community? See, so Tulsi being there creates a lot of problems for him. I imagine that when this crisis is over and we don't go to war against Iran, and I hope that's the case, he will fire her. And then she'll have a chance to come out and speak. But right now, Tulsi's in the exact position she needs to be, because she may be the only thing that's stopping this president from going to war right now.
Militarily, what is the possibility of this happening? Thank you for this, Katerina. Netanyahu said today they can continue the war without the U.S. Thoughts. What is Israel militarily without the United States if the U.S. is not involved in this war?
Well, Israel has, first of all, has a very large and very capable military. Their air force is especially lethal. Modern aircraft, modern weapons, highly trained pilots. But Israel, for the last couple of years, has been running exercises. Before October 7th, 2023, they ran a series of exercises in the 2 years prior. I think Chariot of Fire was the last exercise. And basically, it was a stress test of the Israeli force that said, can we beat all of our enemies at once if we had to fight them all at once? And the answer was no. And the problem was Iran. Israel does not have the capacity to initiate and sustain a war-winning fight against Iran. Iran's too big, and Israel will run out of resources. They can't win the war against Iran. They need American help, and all of the exercises had America coming to Israel's assistance when it came to Iran. So as long as the United States is staying out of this fight, Israel can't win this fight. They don't have the physical capacity to win in a conventional fight. They want to bring in nuclear weapons. That's a whole different discussion and reality we move into. But conventionally, Israel can't beat the Iranians in a stand-up fight. The Israelis tried to deliver the knockout punch. They went for decapitation, killing a lot of senior IRGC leaders, thinking that if they got rid of this hardcore element, that they would free up the moderate Iranian government to act on its, natural inclinations to pursue peace, and that they would get the Iranians to say, just stop bombing us and we'll give up our nuclear program. Then they also thought that maybe that could lead to unrest inside Iran, and you could see the theocracy collapse and you have regime change. And then when you have regime change and a government that wants to be friendly with the West, you can dismantle the missile program. That's what the Israelis were looking for. Didn't happen. They killed a lot of guys. They delivered this knockout punch, shock and awe. Today, the Iranians are closer to the theocracy than ever before. They've rallied around Ali Khamenei. They've rallied around the president. They've rallied around Iran. And Iran, even if they kill Ali Khamenei, and I believe they will, I believe that this doesn't end without him dead. They're going to go for him. They're going to kill him. But he's already said, I'm a dead man. He's acknowledged his death. He said, I will die. But Iran will continue. Iran is a theocracy. There will be somebody to replace him. When the Pope dies, there's always white smoke that eventually comes out of the chimney. If they kill Ali Khamenei, the Assembly of Experts will pick a new, Vilayati Faqih, supreme jurisprudence. And that's the way it is. They're not getting rid of this. They're actually just empowering the theocracy even more.
So I want to. Go ahead.
The Israelis. Go ahead. No, I'm just saying that I just want to just say this because I saw your face when I said Ali Khamenei and assassinated. You're like, what? You do know that at the end of the Gulf War, Desert Storm, when the war ended, Iraq had fired 49 Scud missiles into Israel. 49. The Iranians have fired like 490, but 49. And the United Nations put together the Special Commission, inspectors like me who were supposed to go in and get rid of the weapons of mass destruction. The Israelis weren't satisfied with that. And they had a meeting, and the director of military intelligence, Uri Sagay, said, the only way we're ever going to be safe is kill Saddam Hussein. And they began planning an assassination of Saddam Hussein, and it was ready to be executed in November of 1993. They were a week away from the event, which was a funeral of Adnan Kharala, the uncle. Saddam would have attended. The Israelis would have had their assassination team in place, and they would have killed Saddam. But they had a mishap at the final training exercise. 5 Israeli soldiers were killed, and that was the end of the exercise. The Israelis, though, didn't give up. They were still saying the only way this ends is with the death of Saddam. Now, I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I flew to Israel in October of 1994, and I met with Uri Sagay in a very, I insisted on meeting with him. The Israelis were like, you don't get to meet with him. And I said, well, and I leave. So I got the meeting. And long story short, I got the Israelis to agree that assassinating Saddam wasn't the answer, that working with the inspectors was the answer, that the way to secure Israel is to guarantee Iraq's weapons of mass destruction programs were thoroughly eliminated. And if Israel had intelligence, to give it to us so that we could complete the task. By the time I finished this 4-year collaboration with Israel, Saddam Hussein went from being a man who had to be killed to the final assessment I got from the Israelis in June of 1998 was that Saddam Hussein was a rational actor the Israelis could live with as long as there were no weapons of mass destruction. So as long as the weapons inspectors continued to do their job, the Israelis saw no threat from Saddam Hussein. Then the CIA ended my mission and the Israelis replaced their intelligence chief. And then we got 9/11 because the Israelis began manufacturing intelligence again. But for a brief moment there, we were able to get the Israelis to change their position. But assassination has always been their thing. So right now I can guarantee you, because I've been there and done that. The reason why I told that story is just so people understand I'm not making stuff up. I can guarantee you that the Israelis right now have made a decision that the only way they will ever feel safe is with the theocracy eliminated. And they have begun planning to assassinate Ali Khamenei, and they will make an effort on his life. It appears they may have already made several efforts on his life, but that's how the Israelis operate. And we as Americans need to distance ourselves. First of all, it's illegal. We're not allowed by law to assassinate heads of foreign states.
Yeah,
but we do it.
I mean,
Soleimani,
yeah, I was about to say Soleimani. The speech from Netanyahu on Fox News to me sounded like a threat when he said that America first is America dead, and he said New York would be next. To me, that sounds like a threat. And my fear is that there will be a false flag event in the United States that's going to be big. And I fear it's going to be blamed on Iran. And I feel like that's how they're going to get support from Americans for the U.S. to go to war and to be at war with Iran. To me, it just sounded like a threat. And I don't know, maybe I'm just, being like conspiratorial, but I'm just thinking of things that have happened in the past. It just seemed like to me, the way he said that, it sounded like he was threatening us, like he was telling us that we better back them or something's going to happen here on American soil.
Well, he did say that, but the implication, I don't think the Israelis are going to carry out a false flag. Watch tomorrow, there's a false flag attack and everyone can say Scott Ritter was wrong again. Okay, I don't care. But I don't think they will, because I've done forensic investigations. It's very hard to pull something off like this when you have people actually looking into it. I think what he's doing is telling the Americans, because remember, let's put it into perspective. Israel's losing. Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister of a nation that's losing a war right now. And every rational actor, when they look at the data, understands that, this is data that everybody's talking about. They're going to run out of ballistic missile interceptors in a week, in 3 weeks. They're going to run out of them. Well, the point I make is they haven't run out of them yet. And Israel's still getting the crap pounded out of it. So it doesn't matter about ballistic missile interceptors. The Iranians have already solved that problem. If they run out, that just means Iran has even more free reign to bring about the destruction. But, Iran is at the point right now where they're just every day picking off 3, 4, 5 high-value targets. Boom, gone. Tomorrow, they'll pick off 3 to 4, 5 more. And then they keep going. And Israel's a small country. There's only so many high-value targets that exist in Israel. And at some point in time, Iran will have destroyed them all. And so what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying is, if we go down, if we die, being Israel, you're next. Iran won't stop until they come for you. That's what I think he's trying to say is you have to help us fight and stop them now, or else they're coming after you. It's the old, we have to fight them over there, or else we have to fight them here way of thinking. but I don't think he has too much credibility amongst Americans anymore. I mean, he is, after all, an indicted, genocide committing maniac. And I think Americans have sort of lost the luster. I mean, the establishment, of course, remains in Israel's pocket. AIPAC, Miriam Adelson's $100 million bribe to Donald Trump to get Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State, things of that nature. But I think the American people are waking up that Israel is increasingly problematic. So I don't see a false flag taking place, and I don't see his words resonating with Americans right now. We need to wake up, though, and make sure that Donald Trump, and here's the important thing. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Tucker Carlson, and I don't know how you feel about, Steve Bannon and all these other, MAGA fanatics. But when MAGA starts turning on Trump, he's got a problem. And right now, Donald Trump has a huge political problem. This isn't about national security, because Iran doesn't pose a threat to us at all. Donald Trump owes Miriam Adelson something. He owes Israel something. So he's trying to deliver on that. But Donald Trump doesn't want his legacy tarnished. He wants to go down in history as the greatest president that ever lived, who did all these cool things. If he goes to war with Iran, he's going to lose his base. The people who voted for him, who said, we voted for a president who said he wanted peace, a president who said he wasn't going to get us involved in another Middle Eastern war. He will lose his MAGA base. That doesn't mean that, of course, he gets kicked out of the White House. But what it means is, first of all, midterm elections, he's going to lose Congress. I mean, how could he? The Democratic Party is in such disarray right now, just scattered to the winds. I mean,
broke.
Yeah. Well,
And
he's going to fix them. He's going to fix them real quick. Go to war with Iran and watch how quick the Democratic Party gets fixed, because people are going to say no to that nonsense. And, they'll take over Congress, and then they'll just hamstring this guy, and he'll spend his final days in the White House, tucked in a corner, tears running down his fat orange face. He doesn't want that. He's been told that his base, and this is the problem, his base has turned on him. And that's what Donald Trump, right now, he's not trying to get somebody to tell him, we can do this, we can do that militarily. He's trying to get people to come and say, the base will stick with you, Mr. President. He's trying to win back the base. 2 weeks isn't about, changing the military outcome in the Middle East. 2 weeks is about him going out to Tucker Carlson and going out to Steve Bannon and going out to all these other MAGA heads and saying, no, you have to support me. You have to back me up on this one. This is important. It's not what you think it is. So he has to make the case for war. And I don't think he's going to be able to make that case, but he's going to make an effort, I believe, which is why I don't think he's attacking in the next 2 days. But I will say something, and I'll put this. I think I've had this conversation with you before, and I said that the only way Fordo gets taken out is with a nuclear weapon. It's the only way that deep buried enrichment facility. Well, gosh, it seems the White House has recognized it, because now you have senior White House officials telling the press, if we're going to bomb Fordo, it's going to be with a tactical nuclear weapon. So I'm just telling you, we're going to nuclear war. I've said that all along. Everybody poo-pooed me. Everything I said about how the United States is going to approach Iran come true. All the criticism I had of Iran, you remember, I said Iran can't have 60% enriched uranium because it makes them a threshold nuclear power, and the United States will use that to make the argument of an imminent threat. They just made it. Word for word, things I told you the last time I spoke and I told to other people. The General Kurilla on June 10th went before the United States Congress, word for word. It's almost as if he cut and pasted what I told you.
Yeah. I think Scott froze for just a second. We'll give him a second. We'll go to some of the super chats while we wait for Scott. Thank you, William. Hi, Sabby. I am disgusted with anyone supporting liar, murderer Trump. We can never, ever forgive or forget Trump and BB genocide, both NWO puppets. Thank you. Yeah, he'll come back. We'll go to some more of the chats, and then we'll give Scott a second. Thank you, Susanna. You can have peace, prosperity, and happiness, or you can have Israel. You can't have both. Thank you, Mika. The biggest threat to this country is Israel. In fact, to the world, it couldn't be more obvious. Thank you. Thank you, Anabi, for the super sticker. Thank you. Thank you, New York Varsity. Israel was the last one to talk about attacking hospitals. I know, like the hypocrisy is unbelievable. Thank you, Anika. Sabby, have you ever heard of the Israel Samson option? Briefly, I have to look at that a little bit more. Thank you, Daniel. Sabby, your channel is indispensable. Thank you. Thank you. That is very sweet of you. Thanks, Sophia. If everyone keeps cloaking around, how fast will this change? Fantasy football, question mark. Thank you, me shoot. Ritter calling people stupid, but he said on J Door, show that Iran shouldn't be developing nukes. Every country should be able to defend against US. We'll wait to see if Scott's able to make it back. Let me go ahead and push these out the way. But in the meantime, speaking of what Scott was just talking about Donald Trump losing his base. That's what I was going to show you next to go along with this. Hopefully Scott can make it back in. But right here, Dave Smith is one of them. I have two clips I want to show you guys of people making that turn. Check this out. This is Dave Smith. He was on Breaking Points.
The missiles that they sent last year toward Israel, as many of us guessed, that wasn't really their best. They were intentionally making an attack that wouldn't really hurt anybody, that wouldn't really lead to a war, which Iran has done over and over again. But now we've pushed them to the point where they probably don't feel that they have the option not to respond. And Donald Trump telling them to come back to the negotiating table now is a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, what a impotent leader to be sitting there talking about coming back to the negotiating table. It's like sitting after Pearl Harbor and telling FDR, now's the time to go negotiate with the Japanese. Right. Negotiations are over now. The time for negotiations was before this. And so, yeah, Donald Trump looks, and man, I supported him this last year. I apologize for doing so. It was a bad calculation. At the time, it seemed like the right one. But he should be impeached and removed for this one. Wow. And not on some like not on some ridiculous Nancy Pelosi. Of course, the Congress will never do it because they're all a bunch of corrupt hacks.
This is the one thing they support. This is like the
Donald Trump should be impeached and removed for this. All of his supporters should turn on him. It's the absolute betrayal of everything that he ran and campaigned on and everything that he stood for. And I will say, despite the fact that, Donald Trump supporters have been labeled like a cult following, and that certainly is true for a percentage of his supporters, he is going to lose his coalition over this. I don't just speak for myself when I say there are a lot of us who simply will not go along with this. So it's just a devastating mistake. By the way, on top of that, he's also going to lose the deportation fight because of this. Because right now he needed all the political capital he could have to turn that, you got a majority support for deportations, but the minority is very mobilized and they're out and they're protesting all around the country. He needed all of his political capital for that move. So here's what we got. The neocons win. More war abroad and, bomb the world and invite the world. No matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
So that was Dave Smith, he's libertarian, but heavily supported Donald Trump. And there he is calling for Donald Trump's impeachment. I remember Dave Smith was going back and forth with people on social media right before the election, making the case for why he was going to support Donald Trump, because he did believe that would be the best way to go towards someone that was anti-war. My speech that I've been giving to people at that point in time was that there was only one anti-war candidate that was on the ballot, on the majority of the ballots, and that was Dr. Jill Stein. It wasn't Kamala Harris. It wasn't Donald Trump. And I think people really need to be willing to break away from this two-party system, because I think you see what is happening, right? There were people who voted against Nikki Haley in the primary because they did not want a neocon. They wanted someone who was going to push back against the wars. And that's why they did vote for Donald Trump and not Nikki Haley in the GOP primary. But it looks like you still got Nikki Haley. You know what I mean? So Dave Smith is one of them. And then earlier today, this was posted on X, Candace Owens has been very critical on her own show, but she also went on to Stephen A. Smith's show to say that Donald Trump has betrayed his base. So a lot of people are coming out, and these aren't people that have like small platforms. Candace Owens has millions of subscribers. So that was something that really stood out to me. Listen to this one.
Well, let's be clear. Right now, the people applauding Donald Trump are Meghan McCain, Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz ran against Donald Trump, and John McCain, with his dying breath, was an ever-Trumper, with his dying breath. And I remember Meghan McCain standing at his funeral saying, this country was always great. It never needed to be made great again, to take a stab at Trump, even as she was giving words for her father, which is remarkable, right? So if Trump is aligning himself with the people that didn't support him, and the people that did support him are saying what he's doing is wrong, that doesn't mean that MAGA betrayed Trump. That means that Trump is betraying MAGA, okay? MAGA is a term, make America great again. And it was because the American people felt like our country was in a steep decline while we were being told that we had to build up every other country with programs. We had to spread democracy in the Middle East. That's been a remarkable failure. And at the same time, our veterans are coming home and they're being treated like crap. We talked about the farmers, we talked about the ranchers. That was the vision that Donald Trump painted that made me get behind him. And I took a lot of bullets for that. Especially as a Black person who's not allowed to vote Republican. And I don't regret voting for him in 2020 and voting for him and telling people to vote for him, because I truly believe he was the better candidate. And I still don't regret voting for him against Kamala Harris, because I still believe he was the better candidate. But this is a betrayal, plain and simple. There's no other way to say that. And I believe what's motivating that is he took $100 million from Miriam Adelson. And these people, you're talking about Mark Levin, they are Israel first, okay? Meghan McCain, she is war machine first. How's that trust fund going to get topped up? What did John McCain do? These people are neocons because they support nonstop war, because that is how they enrich themselves. And if that is what Trump is aligning with, if that's what he wants his legacy to be, I came in fighting neocons and now I've aligned with him, then that's on him. That really is. I can't tell him what to think or what to say or who to support.
Okay, so and now you guys see Candace Owens has been very vocal against Donald Trump. She said this is a betrayal of the base. So to Scott's point, there have been a number of people. Also, Theo Vaughn came out recently and said he's heavily pushing back against this. There's Scott right there. Let's try to. I'll bring you in whenever you're ready, Scott, because I'll ask him about this. Okay, here we go.
Sorry about that.
Dave Smith. So to your point, some people are calling out Donald Trump. Candace Owens, Dave Smith. I mean, people with big platforms said no, right? So how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel like there is a split right now because like people said, no, we voted for you. One of the reasons was because we did not want these wars. Do you feel like there's a split between MAGA where some people feel like they still have to have that allegiance to him? And then you have Candace Owens and Tucker and Steve Bannon and now also Dave Smith saying, no, this is a betrayal.
I believe so. I believe this is a real political crisis for the I apologize. I'm not used to doing interviews on the phone. So if there's instability in my holding it, it's because I've tried to figure out the best way to do this. But just so people know, my internet went out, and it's been that way ever since the FBI raided my house. I honestly believe there's a kill switch that they activate every now and then just to harass me. So I apologize for that. I think Donald Trump has a political problem, a real political crisis. This war will forever. I mean, when we speak of existential issues, this war we're not going to win this war. This isn't going to be, going in and dropping a couple bombs and washing our hands and walking away. First of all, to destroy this target, the Fordo facility will probably require the use of a American tactical nuclear weapon. Now we've broken the taboo on nuclear. This is why Tulsi Gabbard did what she did. This is why she made that video. She didn't have to make that video. That's not the role, but she did it as an indirect attack on the lunatics in the White House who are calling for, the use of attack, because that's the only way we destroy this facility. then our economy will collapse. The global economy will collapse. Everything that Trump said he wants to accomplish, make America great again, America will be in economic dire straits. And he's going to lose his base. He won this election, just so people know that this was, even though, you know, neither candidate was a good candidate. This was a close election, a close election. He won this election because Tucker Carlson, because of RFK Jr., because of Tulsi Gabbard, because of Elon Musk. Those people brought sufficient votes over to allow Donald Trump, an eminently unqualified person, to win the presidency. He can't ignore these people. They brought in a whole group of people who didn't want to go to war. One of the big, hits against the Biden administration is that it appeared that they were moving us in the direction of a war with Russia over Ukraine, and that they were supporting Israel in Gaza. And Trump said, "I'm going to bring an end to these wars." Now, people can say that, in hindsight, well, that he was just, blowing smoke, but at least he was saying the right thing as he was running for president. And a lot of people voted for him. I voted for him for that reason. I don't like Donald Trump. I have a history of despising Donald Trump, but I voted for him because I didn't want to go to war with Russia. And I thought Kamala Harris was taking us that direction. Now, I think there was a whole bunch of people like me who held their nose and went to the poll and said, "Okay, I'm voting for you." And if he goes to war with Iran, he's betrayed all of them, and his legacy is shot. And I think, this man is such a narcissist. He's such an egomaniac that he can't. This isn't a real man. I mean, everybody puts him out there like Donald Trump's a real man. No, he's not. This is a moral and intellectual and physical coward. He doesn't like confrontation. He likes to bluff and have people back down. But notice what happens every time somebody stands up to him. He wilts like hot lettuce under oil. Look at China on tariffs. "I'm going to get 500% tariffs China. I'm going to break the Chinese economy." The Chinese went, "No, you're not." And he went, "Oh, well, the Chinese have contacted me and they're asking me to change my policy." No, they didn't. Your policy was leading us to failure, and you've changed it because you recognize that you're wrong. He can't push Putin around. He tries, bluff, bluff, bluff. Putin's like, "I don't care. I'm blowing up Kiev today. What are you going to do about it?" Can't do anything. He can't stand up to the Zionists. So he's going to take us to a war, even though he promised he wasn't going to take us to a war. But now he has a real problem because his base, the thing that gives him political credibility, is not going to stand there and let this happen silently. So, Candace Owens, thank you. Tucker Carlson, thank you. Everybody out there, Tulsi Gabbard, double thank you. Everybody out there that's doing the right thing, speaking out against this, makes this a political problem for this president. Everybody in the base, the MAGA base. And thank you. I mean, because I do think that is why the president hasn't pulled the trigger yet, because he understands that there will be political consequences to these actions that he's not going to walk away from.
Well, one more question for you, Scott. Many people have been asking, what are the chances that Russia could get involved to help Iran? There was a statement that was given by Vladimir Putin earlier where he said, to summarize this, basically that Iran is not asking for their help, that they don't need them, is what Vladimir Putin is saying. Should there come a time where Iran may feel like they need them, what are we looking at here on a greater scale?
First of all, Russia is a nation that deals with things in a very legal fashion. They signed a security framework agreement on January 17th of this year. And there was secret annexes in there, military annexes, that everybody was speculating what's in that annex, what isn't in that annex. And apparently, the Russians were ready to have a treaty relationship similar to the one they had with North Korea, where they will come to the aid of them. And the Iranians said no. Russia wanted to go in and bolster their air defense. The Iranians said no. Russia wanted to accelerate certain programs to get what the Iranians said no. The Iranians said, we got this. We don't need you. We don't want you to do. And people can say that's foolish, but I'm saying that the Iranian people are rallying around the theocracy because the theocracy is Iran. If Iran starts selling itself out in treaties, that dilutes the legitimacy of the theocracy. It means that the theocracy needs outside interference in order to survive. And the theocracy has always said, no, all we need is the support of the Iranian people. So the Iranians have said no. But I think people need to understand this too, that Iran is the linchpin in a new Eurasian reality, the Eurasian Economic Union. Central Asia, Eurasia, is going to be the economic engine of the future. And Russia and China are working to, to take ownership of this and to control it. Russia signed an agreement with Iran about the North-South Economic Corridor, basically linking St. Petersburg with Tehran through a rail network and shipping networks that connect Russia through the Caucasus region into Iran. This bypasses the Suez Canal. It bypasses the corn, all the shipping routes. It saves Russia billions of dollars in shipping costs. Plus, it becomes, you can't interdict it, with the shipping. China already started the new Silk Road. They sent a train in from Western China. It arrived in Tehran a few days before the bombing began. That's the new Silk Road. If you, in Iran is a member of BRICS. I mean, a major member of BRICS. And so if Russia and China sit back and let the United States and Israel pluck Iran out of BRICS, and it's changing everything. It will undo BRICS. It will diminish Russia and China. And they're not going to let that happen. So I think the Russians and the Chinese, Putin and Xi just finished a phone call today. We don't know the details of it, but they talked almost exclusively about the Israel-Iranian conflict. And I think you're going to see the Russians and the Chinese starting to put markers on the ground. For instance, the Russians said, don't even think about regime change. Don't even think about, assassinate al-Khamenei. And they also said, don't bomb the Bushehr reactor. We have hundreds of Russians there. And if you bomb it, it can become a disaster like Chernobyl. They're starting to create red lines for Israel inside, and I think you're going to see China doing the same thing. And I don't see that Russia and China are going to go to war over Iran unless we use nuclear weapons. Now this becomes a different thing. Russians have told American officials in the past, when Admiral Crowe was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they were briefing a military option to the President of the United States that had the United States leading off with tactical nuclear weapons. And Crowe stood up and said, if we do this, Mr. President, we open Pandora's box. And our intelligence suggests that, other nations that wouldn't use nuclear weapons initially, preemptively, because nobody wants to break the taboo since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they will use nuclear weapons. Russia will use nuclear weapons. China will use nuclear weapons. India and Pakistan, we unleash this disaster. We can't be the first ones to do this. The Russians have said that if the United States uses tactical nuclear weapons against Iran, that it's very likely that if NATO and Europe continue to play stupid games in Ukraine, that Russia will use nuclear weapons against them. Because Russia's not going to be the first to use nuclear weapons. But if the United States uses nuclear weapons, what does it say? It means that this policy of nuclear preemption is real. And Russia's not going to sit back and allow itself to be cowed by America, who now says, well, no, we showed you, we mean it, we'll use nuclear weapons. Russia's like, screw you. We'll just use them too. And once that happens, the world ends. The world ends. So this is a very, very dangerous situation right now, extraordinarily dangerous situation that Russia and China need to manage properly. And I think they're trying. Putin's woken up about this, and I think Xi's woken up about it. And I believe there's a lot of communication taking place right now with the White House from both parties saying, if you think you have problems with us right now, if you move against Iran, it's over. I mean, Russia can't have good relations with a United States that uses nuclear weapons. Can't. It's impossible. And China can't have trade relations. And so they will seek to isolate the United States, and it's just going to get ugly. So anybody who thinks that Russia and China are just going to sit in the background, they're wrong. Russia tried to make a military agreement. Iran didn't want it. And there's nothing Russia can do if Iran doesn't want it. Russia can't force that agreement on the Iranians. But the Russians are there for the Iranians. in other ways. And there's been a series of flights coming in from China, big 747 cargo jets flying in from China to Iran. Curiously, the Israelis aren't doing anything to stop it, because I think the Chinese might have said, don't. But who knows what they're bringing? Could it be advanced military technology? Could it be, who knows what they're bringing in? But the Chinese are in the process of doing something with the Iranians. So I don't think you're going to see Russia and China sitting this one out.
Oh, one more for you, Scott. I'm not as familiar. From Anika, Sabby, could you please ask Scott about the Israel Samson option? Are you familiar with that, Scott?
Yeah, on my bookshelf behind me, I've got Seymour Hersh's book called The Samson Option. And Seymour Hersh wrote that book, I think in the 70s. And it describes, or maybe early 80s, it describes, Israel's nuclear weapons program. The Samson Option is a thing of mythology. And what I mean by that is the Israelis have never acknowledged it. First of all, Israel has never acknowledged having a nuclear weapons program. They continue to have this plausible deniability aspect to it. But the Samson option is something that was suggested to Seymour Hersh. And what it is that Israel will, if they're facing existential destruction, I mean, it's over. Enemies across the barbed wire, Israel's going down. They will fire nuclear weapons against everybody and kill everybody. Like Samson brought down the temple, killed himself, but killed all the people in the temple. Israel will take everybody down with them. There's a problem with this scenario, though. And that is that Israel has an agreement with the United States that dates back to Richard Nixon and Golda Meir about their nuclear weapons program and how the program, what needs to transpire to use nuclear weapons, etc. And there's a whole protocol that has to be, followed. And people are like, well, Scott, it's just in writing and that's old and they will never do it. Well, again, guys, I've lived a long and interesting life. And I was around in 1991 when Israel began the protocol of using nuclear weapons. Part of the things you do in the protocol is that you will have demonstrations, that you'll make certain declarations that don't say you have nuclear weapons, but hint that they're there and all this. When Saddam was firing missiles into Israel during the Gulf War, the Israelis wanted to intervene. They were ready to send their military into Western Iraq, and we wouldn't let them because that would tear apart the coalition. But the missile still came in. So what Israel did is pulled their Jericho 2 missile out of its storage area, and they did a test flight of the Jericho 2. The Jericho 2 flew exactly the distance from Israel to Baghdad, but it flew instead to the Mediterranean. And it was a signal to the United States that if you don't stop this and the Iraqis put a chemical weapon on Israel, we're going to nuke Baghdad. It was a demonstration. It was part of the protocol that had been agreed to in the past. And the reason why I bring this up is that Israel is sort of bound by that. The scenario Israel faces right now with Iran is not a Samson option type scenario, meaning that, this would be Israel collapsing from within as opposed to people coming across the wire. So for Israel to use nuclear weapons, they have to follow the protocol, which gives the United States at any time the ability to veto this and stop it. So I'm not worried about the Samson option. I actually think the Samson option is a little bit of Israeli driven propaganda designed to intimidate the world, to create the perception of a mad nation willing to take everybody down, so don't mess with the Israelis. But the reality is, Israel is a nuclear power whose ability to use nuclear weapons is closely linked to the United States. And if Israel ever uses a nuclear weapon without the permission of the United States, Israel's in a world of hurt, because they will be outside the framework of everything we stand for when it comes to international law, and it will put the United States in a huge bind. I know a lot of people are like, well, we don't care about that, but it's the truth. I mean, this is why Israel has always been hesitant to admit having it, because they follow the agreement that had been hashed out in 1969 between Richard Nixon and Golda Meir.
Interesting. All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. And again, sorry for the internet outage.
No worries.
Okay. Have a good night.
Bye. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.